Hey everyone, we are talking about a serial killer today. His name is Jerome Brudos. He goes by Jerry. He is one of the most disturbing serial killers I have ever come across. Jerome Brudos, Jerry Brudos. His nickname is the Shoe Fetish Slayer. I prefer that nickname. Other people call him the Lust Killer, but that could be like 300 serial killers could be called the Lust Killer. But a guy that really gets off on women's shoes, the Shoe Fetish Slayer, has my attention. All of these photos I'm showing you, we will scan and post on my Patreon page. So if you want them, you can get them in the fan page. Okay, so they're available. Jerome Brudos, as a child, like many of the kids you see when you read about serial killers, he did grow up in a troubled situation. So let me give you a little bit of his story. I was born in 1939. This is an older serial killer, 1939. He was born in South Dakota, actually Webster. His mother told him she wanted a daughter. She was very disappointed that she had a son and she wanted a daughter. And she told him that his entire childhood, which is obviously not good, right? That's his first, tick against him, his first, whatever you want to call it. I always ask people when I'm doing these stories, like, when do you think this guy should have gotten some help and that people would have said, this guy's going to be a serial killer, right? So we already know his mother's telling him, you really didn't want you. At age 5, he starts to develop a fetish for women's underwear and high-heeled shoes, women's shoes. He's playing one day at a dump, a junkyard, whatever you call it where you live, a refuse. I call it a dump. He finds a pair of women's high heels. He brings them home, and he wears them around the house. I was talking to somebody else. I said, are we concerned yet? And they were like, no. I've seen kids put other people's shoes on and walk around the house. That's pretty normal for being kids. His mother took them and burned them. And I'm sure he saw her burning them and he thought, wow, this is like forbidden fruit, right? At the age of 6 or 7 years old, he's in elementary school. He tries to steal the teacher's extra pair of high-heeled shoes in the classroom. He gets caught. He's very embarrassed. There's another tick against him, another strike of, pushing him more towards being a killer. He fails the second grade. So 6 or 7 years old, he fails the second grade, I'll say 7. And he's got lots of health issues. He's got headaches. They're worried that he can't see properly. And this is kind of going through his entire childhood. We've heard this with John Wayne Gacy and other killers like him. At the age of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right in there, from 47 to 51, 1947, 1951, he moves to Oregon. And that's where he lives in Oregon. And his father can't hold a job, so he moves around, right? So they're constantly moving around Oregon. As he's playing with his friends, he starts to get attracted to the friends' sisters, and he steals their clothing. He puts their clothing on. He steals their shoes. He wears their shoes. This continues throughout his childhood. In 1952, he's 13 years old, teenager, probably in puberty. He discovers his brother's pornography collection. He really likes it. When he's 16 years old, going through puberty, as we know, he is having wet dreams, sexual dreams, and messing up his sheets. And his mother is totally just disgusted and makes him wash his own sheets. So that is his teenage years. At the age of 16, wearing a mask, he kidnaps a woman. Let me back up. He steals something from a woman and he wears a mask and he kind of cons her into coming somewhere. He appears with the mask and he makes her take off her clothes and takes pictures of her. This is at the age of 16. Takes nude photos of a young girl. And for some reason, she does not really report this. And as you notice, all these killers, they all have incidents like John Wayne Gacy and others where they should have been stopped prior to all this, and they weren't, and it just continues. And I think the reason why this continues with people like Bundy, Gacy, Dahmer, and all them is because they look normal. And I'm going to continue to beat this in your brains the next few years. Killers do not look like killers. Killers do not look like killers. So at the age of 17, he lures a female to his vehicle, drives her to an abandoned farmhouse, tries to have sex with her. She doesn't. He beats her, and he's arrested. They find his collection of underwear and photos in his bedroom. He's sentenced to the Oregon State Mental Hospital. So he gets sent off to a mental hospital in 1956. He's 17 years old. This was a place that was really creepy. Back in the day, they had mental hospitals, and they don't look like they look like today. If you ever seen the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, like crazy place, like people screaming and going crazy. That's what imagine him living there. And let me see, he lived there almost a year, like 9 to 12 months. He was released and he was deemed not a threat anymore. This happens all the time. He was released, just like John Wayne Gacy was, and he's fixed. He's no longer a threat. And so he goes back to school. He graduates from high school. He has a very bad, like a 2.1 GPA. He tries his hand at college and tech school. It doesn't work. So at the age of 20, he joins the Army. This is in 1959. He gets kicked out of the Army. Surprise! He gets kicked out of the Army. He's no longer in the Army. And so it's just not going well. The reason he got kicked out of the Army is the city had bizarre obsessions. So at the age of 21, 1960, he moves back home with his parents. You ready for this? They make him sleep in the shed. You remember Ed Kemper? His mother made him sleep in the basement. Well, this guy, Brudos, mother makes him sleep in the shed. I can't imagine that. And so he goes and he chokes a woman unconscious while he's sleeping in the shed. He steals her shoes, underwear, whatever, and he sleeps with their shoes and her underwear in that shed behind his parents' house. He's 21 years old. At the age of 21, he obtained an FCC license, and he began working at a radio station in Corvallis, Oregon. That is where he would meet his future wife. His future wife, and he marries her, is this woman. So he gets married. He marries Darcy Metzler in 1962. He's 22 years old. Her parents did not approve of Jerome Brudos. They knew something. Someday they'll be able to say, we told you so. They move him down the Oregon coast just like his father. They move up and down the Oregon coast. He can't keep a job. He's losing getting jobs. He moves up and down the coast. It's just a very unstable lifestyle. In 1962, he's at 23 years old. His daughter's born. So now he's got a wife and he has a daughter. This story reminds me so much of our last story, John Wayne Gacy. And then in 1967, he has a son, Jason. His son is born. His wife wouldn't allow him to be at the birth. I don't know why that is, but it really drove him insane. And then he kind of like went to his dark side. And he started stalking women, going after underwear and shoes. Now, this serial killer was made famous. Not so many people know Brudos. I've been talking about him for a long time, but in the show Mindhunter on Netflix, he was made famous in Mindhunter. And this guy did a really good job of the character in Mindhunter. And it really was one of the best characters in Mindhunter. It was this guy and Ed Kemper that made the show Mindhunter. Remember, this is the series where, remember, they brought him a pair of high-heeled shoes in a box and put it on the table. This is Jerry Brudos. They actually found a bunch of high-heeled shoe magazines in his prison cell after he died. He loved high-heeled shoes. Loved them. So Jerome Brudos, Jerry Brudos. He's a monster. Doesn't really look like a monster. So his wife wouldn't let him be at the birth of his son. He's now focused on his dark side. And he was stalking women in Portland. He waited till a woman fell asleep, broke in her house, choked her unconscious, raped her, took her shoes and her underwear. Now he's raping women. So if you know anything about crime and serial killers, it's a progression. Stalking, going into the home, stealing trophies, raping and leaving, and now we're up to the big M, the big murder. And so when he's 28 years old, in 1967, he attacks a woman, and her name is Linda Slawson. I'm going to show you her right here. This is Linda. Let me get her a picture. Linda Slawson, right? The blonde right here. She's his first victim, okay? She comes to his house. She knocks on the door, and she's selling encyclopedias. Oh, my gosh. What a terrible situation. You're knocking on a serial killer's door. He invites her in and says, let's go to the basement. She goes to the basement. She should have been suspicious. Maybe he just looks so normal. He takes a 2x4 and beats her over the head, chokes her to death, sexually assaults her corpse, cuts off her foot, puts it inside a high heel shoe that he has. And after he cut off her foot, he would strip her naked and put some of the underwear that he had from other people that he collected. He would put her in and pose her, take pictures. Cut her foot off, put it inside a high heel, put it in the freezer in the garage, and he kept it for his masturbation. He would take out the foot and high heel and masturbate over it and put it back in the freezer. Victim number 1, beautiful young lady, selling encyclopedias, Linda Slawson. There's other people reported missing. He's been accused of. He never admitted to those. Stephanie Vico is reported missing in Portland. Then victim number 2, a student at University in Oregon, goes missing. Jan Whitney. Jan Whitney is right here. He kills her. Victim number 2. And he likes to cut off their feet, their breasts, have sex with their corpses. He's a necrophiliac. He's a very, very violent individual. Then Karen Sprinkler. Karen Sprinkler right here, victim number 3. Karen Sprinkler. This is a picture of Karen Sprinkler. He took this last photo of Karen. He made her pose in his underwear that he had. He made her strip naked and pose in those underwear. And Karen Sprinkler was killed. Beautiful young lady. After he killed Karen Sprinkler, he cut off her breasts and he hung her in the garage. So he cut off her breasts. He made a mold of them. He was making a paperweight and stuff like that. And then he hung her in the garage. She's naked. He's had sex with her corpse, cut off her breasts, and he hung her. There's a story where someone comes along, he's at work or he's somewhere, and they kind of have an accident, a crash, and they crash in his garage. The police show up at this accident. If they would have went into the garage, they would have found Karen Sprinkler hanging. Can you imagine that? This is some Ed Gein type stuff right here, Ed Gein. But they don't do that. And he continues his murder spree. He attacks Sharon Wood. She bites his thumb and gets away. He attempts to abduct a 14-year-old girl named Leanne Brumley. He continues to try to kill as many people as he can. Then he kills his 4th victim that we know of, Linda Dawn Sallee, right here. Linda Sallee. Or you can say Sallee. When he killed Linda Sallee, the police are beginning to realize we have a serial killer on our hands. No shit. She was strangled. Her body was found in the Tom River. What he would do with the bodies is he would tie automobile parts with these kind of knots. He would tie automobile parts to their bodies and drop them in the river. And here's the police recovering one of those bodies. Again, all these photos will be scanned and put in my Patreon fan club if you want them. 1969, he's killed 4 people confirmed. There's other missing women and possible murders. He is 30 years old. He continues harassing college girls. He's going to this college and he's just harassing women and trying to get dates. And finally, one of them says, listen, this guy's harassing me. And the police kind of investigate him. He is actually arrested on May 28th, 1969. He's 30 years old for a attempted abduction and murder. They were after him for Leanne Bramley, the young 14-year-old girl. So he's arrested, his first time. When he's arrested, he confesses to all 4 murders he's convicted of. He confesses to these murders, okay? So amazingly, he didn't have to do that, but he did. He confessed to these 4 murders. Here are the victims. Rest in peace to the 4 victims. At least we know of 4. He confesses to the murders. He is charged with only 3 murders because they couldn't find the body of the 4th victim. He's charged with the murder of Whitney, Sallee, and Sprinkler. He pleaded guilty, was convicted, and sentenced to 3 life sentences. So Jerome Brudos is sentenced to 3 life sentences, and he will spend the rest of his life in prison for these murders and be known as the shoe fetish slayer. Jerome Brudos, the lust killer, the shoe fetish slayer. Now, there were at least 12 women missing during his crime spree. He possibly killed 16 victims, but they have not been tied to him. In 1970, at the age of 31, Darcy divorces him and refuses to let his kids ever to see him again. Wife is gone. He's in prison for life. His children are gone. It's 1970. In prison, Brudos doesn't do well. He's beaten many times. He's sodomized, he's raped because he killed young females. Inmates don't like that. His prison time didn't go well. May 28, 2006, at the age of 67, Brudos dies in prison. So 2006, at the age of 67, this is what he looked like at the end. Jerome Brudos, Jerry Brudos dies in prison. Ann Rule wrote a book about him called Lust Killer, if you want to read that. He was featured in the Netflix series, I said, Mindhunter. There's a movie in 1981 about his life. The movie's called Polyester, and it features a disturbed teen named Dexter Fishpaw, who's based on Jerome Brudos. Jerome Brudos' diagnosis: he was borderline schizophrenic, antisocial personality, fetishism, voyeurism. He was an exhibitionist. He was into transvestitism. He was into sadism, causing pain. He was a necrophiliac. He had sex with the dead and corpses. He posed the bodies after he killed them and took photos of them, and he kept trophies. He kept their feet and their breasts. Jerome Brudos, known as Jerry Brudos, the shoe fetish slayer who stalked Oregon for many years. I hope you enjoyed that little historical lesson on the serial killer named Jerome Brudos. Thanks for watching. Pair of high-heeled shoes in the classroom.